And with the lingering strike by members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, where the Council of Student Union President is calling for the sack of the Ministers of Education and Labor for failing to resolve the ongoing ASUU strike. The union threatens to mobilize students across the country to occupy major streets in the country until the prolonged strike is called off. Khalid Osamede reports.
Students have found themselves at the receiving end of the continuous strike embarked on by Academic Staff Union of Universities over unresolved issue with the federal government since 2009. It has caused untold hardship for both students and their parents due to the uncertainty of the academic calendar. Even when ASUU members get some of their demands met and return to classes, they are soon out back on strike, leaving the students to pick up the pieces of their lives with great difficulty. This is now over 5 months since ASUU embarked on its latest strike. The Council of Students Union President, which comprises of all students' union presidents across federal universities in Nigeria, are not taking this lightly. They are giving the government a time frame to resolve the issue or have Nigerian students in major streets of the nation's capital.
We also call for the immediate removal of the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, and the Minister of Labor, Chris Ngige. We are going to shut down the activities of the airport. We are going to block major roads in the Federal Capital Territory. At least we are going to start receiving lectures in the Ministry of Education, both in the Ministry of Labor and even in the airport.
The council says that it is losing students to incessant killing from bandit attack following their prolonged stay at home, as they begged the government to look into the demands of ASUU as presented and attend to them so they could return to school. Helen Osamede Kings, TVC News, Abuja.
Well, joining me now via Zoom for more discussion on this is a human rights activist and public affairs analyst, Olufemi Lawson. Thank you for joining me, sir. All right. So the strike is extended by 4 weeks to give the government more time to resolve the issues. Do you see anything positive happening in the coming days?
Well, fundamentally, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't think there's enough readiness on the part of the federal government to bring this issue to an end, especially when you look at how long this has lingered. And it is very unfortunate that what ordinarily should be a major priority to any serious country has been so abandoned to the extent that we cannot really predict any foreseeable time that this strike will be brought to an end. It is very sad that enough attention has not been given to this, enough priority has not been attached to this, and one cannot say that there is any resolution at sight, considering how far this has been, prolonged up till now.
Okay, so the latest is that the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Festus Keyamo, had advised Nigerian parents to beg the striking university teachers to call off their strike, added that the federal government had no money to meet ASUU demand. What do you make of this?
Well, I think in all fairness, that statement should not be taken with any iota of seriousness by anyone, not even by parents or even teachers, not even by the federal government that Mr. Keyamo works for. It is quite insensitive, and I don't think it really appeals to the issue itself when you have to resort, to asking parents to go and beg ASUU. How will that kind of begging or appeal, address the fundamental issues that ASUU have been raising, which has led to this strike? And what commitment has the federal government that Mr. Keyamo works for, made to the extent that Nigerian parents can now ask ASUU, to begin to consider the need to? It's very sad that our universities could be shut for this long. But the truth is that if these issues are not addressed once and for all, there is a tendency that we'll wake up next year again or in the next couple of months to another industrial action by the ASUU. I think what Mr. Keyamo or every other patriotic Nigerian should be saying is how federal government and ASUU can reach an amicable end to this issue once and for all, rather than postponing the evil day. It is not enough for us as parents to go and prostrate for ASUU to call off the strike. Does that address the fundamental issues that this strike, the issues around this strike? No. I think we should not continue to trivialize issues that are serious as the future of a country, the way Mr. Keyamo has attempted to do.
All right, so the union as well had their two-day protest, but they're still saying that there is no sign of seriousness or serious commitment on the part of the government. Do you agree with them?
Seriously, that is the reality. And I think one of the issues that some of us personally have with the negotiations and the commitment of the federal government is that the ministry, ordinarily that should have been taking the lead in finding a resolution to this issue, the Ministry of Education has practically gone to sleep, and one cannot but continue to ask why President Muhammadu Buhari is keeping Mr. Adamu Adamu as the Minister of Education in Nigeria. If you look at the role Minister Chris Ngige has played, in even bringing, a resolution to this issue, you realize that even the Ministry of Education has not played a quarter of this role. It's sad, and it tells you that even the ministry that is in saddle is not primarily feeling the pains, and it's not showing enough commitment. And we have a responsibility to demand that the federal government meet, even if it cannot meet in wholesome, the basic and fundamental demands of ASUU. You cannot continue to make promises and begin to renege as soon as strikes are called off. Look at the issue of the revitalization fund already agreed in the agreement between federal government and ASUU. 200 billion naira per annum. As at this year that is already in August, how much of the annual commitment has federal government made into this agreement? Does it mean that a country like Nigeria cannot commit 200 billion towards the revitalization of its public university in a year? These are part of the fundamental issues that ASUU is raising that the federal government is not addressing. You cannot promise over 200 billion and drop a token of 30 billion and assume that it is enough for us to continue to produce graduates who are just passing through the university now to get certificate, not getting really equipped as university students should be, because of the lack of basic necessities that should really turn our universities to real refineries of knowledge. And these are the issues that I think federal government should take seriously and make this commitment in a genuine manner. Enough of these meetings and promises.
All right. Thank you very much, Olufemi Lawson, for sharing your thoughts with us. The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Malam Adamu, has unveiled Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State and chairman of the Northern Governors Forum as the Director General of the party's presidential campaign organization. The national chairman, who led the presidential candidate of the party, Bola Tinubu, and his running mate, Kashim Shettima, to a meeting with President Muhammad Buhari in his office in Abuja, made the announcement at a briefing. Details in this report.
It's now common practice for the leadership of the All Progressives Congress to defer to the president on critical decisions and announcements within the party. This time they have come to tell President Buhari about the shape and form the presidential campaign will take ahead of next year's general election. The national chairman of the party, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, announced that the governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, is the Director General of the party's presidential campaign, saddled with the responsibility to lead the party to victory at the polls.
The person who is going to be the DG, the Director General of the APC Presidential Campaign Organization, is His Excellency, seated by my left here, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
We are happy with it. That is why you see the leadership cadre, and we are able to confirm to you that we've had the buy-in of Mr. President, the leader of the party.
I'm not a Christian candidate. I was not nominated as a Christian candidate. The party said I've been nominated because of my ability. You understand? My ability, I'm governor of Plateau. I didn't say I'm governor of Christians in Plateau.
With just about 6 months until the general election, the APC and its presidential campaign team must work hard to show Nigerians what the Tinubu-Shettima ticket brings to the table in terms of ending insecurity, improving the country's economic fortunes, and the general well-being of citizens. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
Joining me now in the studio, I have Otumba Biodun Ajiboye, member of the Media Directorate APC Presidential Campaign Council for the 2023 presidential elections. Thank you very much for joining me, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so what do you make of the composition of Governor Simon Lalong led APC Presidential Campaign Council?
Well, Lalong is just a logical answer to the nagging question of the Muslim ticket or same-faith ticket that has plagued the polity in the last couple of weeks. And everybody's been bothered, everybody's been complaining. The Christian community in Nigeria have been feeling left out. It's only logical for the party to be sensitive and responsibly so to say, look, at this juncture, a Christian, governor who has the right political clout should, lead the campaign as DG. Is a logical response to the clamor, which I think is just responsible, on our part as a party. So I feel it's just fine and good.
Okay, so what can you also say about the person of Simon Lalong and the task before him for the party?
Just like I said, Lalong is a Christian, is governor of Plateau, and there is a belt in the north, a northern belt, Christian belt, Plateau, Gombe, Bauchi, southern part of Bauchi, some other part of even southern Borno that are Christians. Now, Lalong will have the ability to talk to the Christians to say, look, the choice of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and and Shettima is not basically on the basis of religious sentiment, but on the basis of their performance as governors, their performance and ability to perform and deliver, good governance to the people. The party did not consider the sentiment of religion or religious sentiment. And no, politics is not really religion. Politics is just about people of like minds coming together to say, look, we need to have political power. It is not on the basis of whether you are a Christian or you are a Muslim. No. Now, that was what actually, propped up Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his choice of a vice presidential candidate. Therefore, certain people felt a bit neglected in the choice, and we are responding to that neglect because it's a bit, we appreciate it. It's genuine. Democracy is about representation. So in some climes, they call it representational democracy. Therefore, if a certain kind of a class of people feel neglected, we must recognize their point and their issue. And we must, as responsible people, responsible political party, we must address it. And this is what we are just trying to do. So I think it's just good and it's just balanced.
It was a major concern for Nigerians, the Muslim ticket, and now Lalong is here. Do you think is even still enough to balance that equation in carrying everybody along?
Let me tell you the truth. Politics is about governance. You need to seize political power to be able to entrench good governance. Right. Your calculation to seize political power is based on popularity, is based on ability. Right. Therefore, at this juncture, the party, APC, I felt, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu won his primaries. It wasn't based on religious sentiment. It was a calculation of popularity. People voted. Religion was not an important issue. Now, if the Christians now feel, wow, your vice president should have been a Christian, but our consideration is ability to win elections. And we say, okay, for us to be able to win elections, this personality will be very good for us. But you are now very upset about our choice. And we're saying we are sorry, but if we do not win elections, we won't even have an opportunity to entrench good governance or come up with policies that can address your concern. Because without addressing your concern, the Christians feel persecuted. Okay, but we must be able to put policies across to be able to address this feeling of persecution, or this persecution as it were. If we do not win elections, we can't do that. For us to win elections, we have to put popular candidates, regardless of religious sentiment. So therefore, it is part of politics to have the right public relations. What we are doing now is to say, our Christian brothers, please do not be angry. We did not do this to spite you. We will never have done this to spite you. But if you give us the opportunity, if you support us and we win, then we will then discuss and say, what exactly are the issues? Let us now put policies that will address it. 1. 2, government or governance is a tripod. Democracy, the kind of presidential, governance that we practice in Nigeria is an executive, judicial, executive, legislature, executive, and judiciary. Okay, power of the legislature is separated from the power of the executive and the judiciary. Therefore, the executive is just the presidential candidate or the president in an executive setting is the ticket, is a joint ticket. The president owns the ticket. He has a vice, so it's a joint ticket. It is his power to start with. The power is now devolved and say, I delegate to you, vice president, where I cannot perform, you perform. Constitutionally right, the vice president has a role. What the Christians actually need here is to say, look, can we talk about the judiciary? Can we talk about the legislature? This is the balancing of power. In that instance, it means that they now have a voice. It is not the vice president. If, okay, we had a vice president in Professor Osinbajo, persecution is still very clear. It's still the feeling of persecution is still everywhere. Why hasn't that Christian vice addressed it? Why do we still have that problem? So we're saying at this point that since we now see this as a problem, we now understand that, okay, we must address it. And at Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government will work towards a Christian survival of the Christians, addressing the problems of the Christians in the right toga, in the right tone, in the right way, such that this feeling of persecution will clear off the way. Number 3, let me say again.
We are almost out of time, sir. We have our last story to take. But I really appreciate your contributions so far. Thank you very much for coming. The Akwa Ibom High Court in Oyo State has sentenced Uduak Frank Akpan, the first accused in the murder of Unibong Umeren, to death by hanging. And the more than 2 hours judgment by the presiding judge, Basi Nkanang, the convict was found guilty of rape and murder and sentenced to be hanged on the neck till he dies. The court, however, discharged and acquitted his father, Frank Akpan, and sister, Awan Basi, who were standing trial for accessory after the fight to murder. And shortly after the pronouncement, and more drama ensued when Mr. Akpan attempted to escape, but it, however, took the intervention of the police to foil the attempted escape. Unibong Umeren, a graduate of philosophy from the University of Uyo, was killed on April 2021 by the suspect who lured her to his residence with a fake job interview. She was also raped in the attack and buried in a shallow grave in the suspect's apartment. Now, joining me via Zoom to analyze this is a lawyer, founder, and executive director of Vitos Africa, Buki Shunobere. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, I am.
All right, thank you. What are your thoughts on this judgment, especially when state governors really sign death warrants?
Although governors rarely sign death warrants, this is a welcome judgment nonetheless, especially in today's Nigeria, where women and girls continue to face all forms of violence, which are violations of their rights and freedoms. Nigeria is party to many international human rights instruments and has a due diligence obligation to prevent, to investigate, to prosecute, to punish, and to compensate when violations of rights like this happen. For Iniobong, she was denied a right to life as guaranteed in Section 33 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. So that means that even if governors are not signing death warrants, this judgment is still welcome nonetheless.
Also, do you believe death penalty helps to curb violent crimes?
First, we must note that the judgment that was given in this matter is two-pronged. First is the fact that Uduak was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment for the offense of rape, as prescribed by the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, which Akwa Ibom State is a party to. The presiding judge, Justice Bassi, then also pronounced the death sentence in compliance with Section 319 sub 1 of the Criminal Code Act, which basically says that anybody who commits the offense of murder shall be sentenced to death. Now, having established that, I am of the personal opinion that death penalty does not necessarily help to curb violent extremism or violent crimes. Death sentence, admittedly, can help to deter others, but preventing violent crimes like this require a transformative approach. And when such crimes have happened, I think a corrective approach should rather be deployed. Correctionally, I think that rather than eliminate, I would rather repair. The way our society is designed, there are more Uduaks out there, and which brings me to the transformative approach. By transformation, I mean we must consider, it is in consideration of the fact that we deal with the very reason for which these violent crimes happen in the first place. If not, we'll keep producing criminals like Uduak. How many would we sentence to death? How many are we going to kill? And my last point on this question is societal transformation then becomes necessary as a way to address the deeply rooted stereotypes for why women and girls are primary target of this kind of rapes and this kind of sexual violence-related crimes. These crimes are rooted in the quest of the perpetrators to exert power and domination over their victims. And this sense of power is a function of a stereotypical norms, cultures, traditions, practices, prejudices that subjugate women.
All right, finally, before I let you go, how do you think we can protect our women in today's society against crimes like this?
Good question. I think that we must start with social transformation as a way to address the unequal power imbalance and power relations between men and women in Nigerian societies as it is in other societies. This means that at all levels, national, state, and grassroots communities, government and all state actors must deliberately address why women are targeted for rape and sexual violence-related crimes like this, which happens to them on the basis of the agenda. This doesn't mean that men and boys don't get abused, but we know that in instances like this, women and girls are disproportionately affected. In practical terms, by transformation, if we look at the Iniobong's case, she was lured and into something that has to do with job seeking or job interview. This means that the very process that led to her death must actually be scrutinized or be investigated. And by so, I mean that the state government must work with employers, must work with recruiters to identify the loopholes in recruitment processes that criminals like Uduak are taking advantage of. If they are luring job seekers, then there is, more of like a process that needs to be looked into. And my closing thought on that would be that the government must then work collaboratively with business owners and recruiters to make sure that those holes are breached through. First, job seekers must be able to, for instance, verify the authenticity of that recruitment process. They must also be able to log, their presence when they go for these job interviews.
All right, Boki joined us via Zoom from Oxford, United Kingdom. Thank you very much for your contribution so far.
Thanks for having me.